Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. I'm over the moon with today's co-host that we have. This is truly such an honor. It is a career that spans decades, genres, mediums, on the stage, on the screens, both big and small. Maybe you've seen some of her work appearing in Orphan Black, perhaps The Umbrella Academy, perhaps anything for Jackson, an excellent little horror movie that came out a few years ago that I love, or most recently, the prestigious, surprising dark comedy, surprising revenge thriller, obviously poignant, artful drama by Sarah Polley, Women Talking. Sheila McCarthy, welcome to the podcast. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started here today?
Oh, God.
And you're an acting teacher. You're an acting teacher as well.
Oh, I'm an acting teacher. Yes. Let's see. Well, I was in Die Hard 2, 3,000 years. How about that one? And survived to tell the tale.
You have proven Die Harder. You have proven you can make it out of a Rennie Harlan movie, a Die Hard movie, and a Bruce Willis actioner. So that's
your movies. I'm impressed.
I mean, Rennie Harlan gave me The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is a gift that keeps on giving throughout the eternity of my life. So I could certainly never forget the man for that.
Yeah. He did, that's for sure.
Well, you again, spanning genres, spanning mediums, and now Women Talk. It's.
Mm-hmm. I'm old, so I'm older, and I've been doing it a long time, and I could never figure out anything else to do. So, Sally Field said to me once, Sheila, you must reinvent yourself every 5 years. And I went, okay.
Every 5 is so often.
Oh, I know.
I've heard the every 10 years thing, but 5, I guess that's moving on Hollywood time.
Yeah, maybe.
But hey, if I'm going to get guidance from Sally Field, I think I'll take that to the bank, I guess.
Right on. Yeah. Anytime.
Well, now, when I say, I feel like a thing people don't, I think aren't assuming about Women Talking is that, it is a wry comedy at points. It is by the halfway point and onward, I was like, I've been watching a revenge thriller this entire time, and I didn't realize it. When you were first greeted with the script for this and speaking to Sarah Polley about it, were coming off the page and in conversations with Sarah, were all those aspects of it coming through to you?
You know what? Not at all. And,
okay.
And as a matter of fact, it's almost since making it now that we're being told things that we went, oh, because, when you're making a movie, me as an actor, I'll speak from my own experience, you're a puzzle piece in a very big puzzle. Mm-hmm. So I'm not looking at whole pictures. I'm not looking at the sort of philosophies of the film. I mean, we did rehearse for 2 weeks and we did a lot of talking about Women Talking, for sure. But then when you get down into the making of it, I was sort of mired in my character of Greta. So a lot of things are occurring to us all now that are being told us because you're seeing it in completion. And I love that because it's sort of educating us about what the movie is about.
Well, and for how and for being a veteran of the industry, do you find that is it most often or just kind of split down the middle when work of yours goes out into the world? Do you find that you are more often than not surprised by what you learn from people who communicate to you about it? Or do you generally feel like you have a good sense of how it will localize it on people? Or is it always kind of a surprise?
Well, it really depends on the project, of course. I mean, something as weighty as Women Talking, people are talking about it after and they're continuing to talk. It's promoted this incredible conversation about the subject. And it sort of spans so many aspects of women's rights and Roe versus Wade and repressed women in Iran. We're hearing the gamut. You don't get that, when you do a horror movie necessarily.
Maybe not in Die Hard 2 is that what's going to come after, but other things.
Yeah. It didn't elicit that much conversation, because it's sort of, the popcorn movies are just fun and then they're forgotten. But for something like, Women Talking is resonating and it's really sort of having a profound effect on people and many different kinds of effects too, so that is it's wonderful. And so we're talking to a lot of people about it now and the conversation just keeps going and going and going. So.
Well, it's always, I feel like one of the most interesting things to me about like the process of making a film or television or theater too is you start working on it, obviously so much further, so much earlier than when the world sees it. And
Mhm.
the world that you're making something in is not necessarily the world that it is going to arrive in.
Mhm.
And it is fascinating to think of how, like, because you guys made this under like the fraught circumstances, I think, of like lockdown
Oh,
conditions during.
definitely. I never saw Sarah Polly's face, who wrote and directed it. I mean, the crew were always masked. We were
Mhm.
masked except when we were shooting. And honestly, it really wasn't until it opened in Telluride and people were like thronging, people coming up on the streets talking to
Mhm.
us. We had no idea. I mean, didn't, I don't think about it. And we didn't think about, we
Yeah.
had no idea the effect that it would have on people. Like, and I think that's good,
Mhm. Oh,
because we were,
absolutely.
a bunch of women in sandals and ankle socks talking and talking and talking. And, that was our concern. Like, oh my God, are people going to listen to this? Like, this requires a certain attention span.
Well, that was
So,
kind of what I find so fascinating about the sort of magic trick that it pulls off is that it's beautiful and compelling. And for the first half of the movie, I was like, I'm in this beautiful, compelling conversation, and then
mhm.
didn't realize it once I got like, I feel like I got doored, like going by on the bike, and I got doored by like, oh, I'm now on the edge of my seat in this movie in a way that I thought I was just going to be contemplatively, like, stroking my chin and admiring the beauty and poignancy of this. And then I was like, I am gripping these sides of my chair, and I'm suddenly white knuckling through women talking, and I want people to know that it can be that sort of variety of experience
Well, yeah,
for
but
them.
there is a tension. There's this ticking clock. It's 48 hours. And yet it's done within the sort of realm of 8 women and Ben Wishaw almost singing a hymn for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Taking our faith and being patient with it. But at the same time, those boots on the ground and what could happen to us if we're caught creates such a great tension in the film that I was aware of. It was wonderful.
Well, obviously, we have a coterie in this film of incredible actors. My God, what a murderer's row this film, and the character that you have brought for the conversation today, as far as like a character that you felt connected to earlier than Women Talking. This is 1969 film, The Sterile Cuckoo. And that the subject you have brought is Liza Minnelli's lead character, Pookie. And I had never seen this film before. I hadn't heard of The Sterile Cuckoo, so I was so excited to dive into something new. And I wanted to know, how old were you when you first experienced this movie?
So 69, I was 14.
So you saw it when it came out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think it was sort of one of the first, adult films that I probably snuck into to see. And so, because, it's dealing with pregnancies and, unwed, illicit sex and, older than me. So it was, it had a profound effect on me because I don't think I'd ever seen anything like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and we meet Liza's character. We meet Pookie and the main boy of the story, Jerry. They are at a bus stop in kind of like seeming like any town, USA, and they're both going off to their respective colleges. And we kind of meet Liza and what I think we would it aligns in the archetype now that I think we would identify as a kind of like manic pixie dream girl style character. But what is interesting about and where the manic pixie dream girls exist to sort of like give the man the reason to see the world through new eyes for the first time and inspire him. This movie is kind of a misdirect of that trope as we've come to understand it, where it seems like that's what's happening at first. But as Pookie's character unfolds, she is challenging in ways that do not align with the whimsy that the sort of trope of that became. And Pookie almost becomes like an anti-hero character where we meet her being like, I've got to get out of this town. Like, I can't be around these weirdos anymore. Like I can't be around these weirdos.
Common North American insects. Terrific. Oh, grasshopper gills. I know a girl who had a gill. Grew out of her throat. I don't know if it was a grasshopper gill, though. Anyway, she had it operated on, and the operation left this little hole, and every now and again it would bleed, so she had to wear a scarf to school. Sheila Crothers. She was a weirdo, though. It's hard to think of that as your average operation. Boy, it's gonna be nice to get away from all these weirdos.
and when we meet her and we hear her talking about the weirdos, we're like, oh, she must be kind of like an odd man out. Like she doesn't really fit in. People don't understand her. But as we come to know Pookie over the course of the film, she doesn't really give people a chance to understand her. And she's kind of prickly and she's self-isolating. And so I wanted to hear, like, what were the shades of Liza's performance in this character that you felt yourself like bumping into the most as familiar to you?
Well, it's really interesting because you don't necessarily like her all the time, and she gets on your. I mean, you become the Jerry in watching the movie because you're going, she's cringy, she's embarrassing, she's no filters, inside voice being heard all the time. But for me, there is this sort of Walter Mitty sort of quintessential underdog aspect of Pookie Adams that just breaks my heart. And she's everything you always feel about your own insecurities or my own insecurities that I guess I related with. And I watched it again recently too, and it was I just thought, oh, she's annoying. She's more annoying than I remember. But there's this heart there, and there's this effort on her part to fit in and to be part of and to be that sort of, square peg in a square hole. And it's just never going to happen. The heartache of that movie. There's another French film called The Lace Maker with Isabelle Huppert that touches on the same things of this sort of just oddball trying to fit in. And, I think it gets me where I live. I've always been slightly that, oh, she's not pretty enough. She's the sort of quirky best friend. She's the, what I mean? I grew up like that. And I so identified with Liza. And ultimately we worked together too. And
wow.
If I could just sidebar, I did a movie called...
No, please, sidebar until you and Liza.
I did a movie called I've Heard the Mermaids Singing, and it was a character very like Pookie and Polly. Her name's Polly. And I don't know whether the author, Patricia Rozema, took a page from Sterile Cuckoo. Probably not. But there's the similar quintessential underdog, misfit, not fitting in. And it's just delicious to play those parts. And then years later, and Liza loved that movie. She was cast. She was doing a movie called Stepping Out about a tap dance class, and so I sent her Mermaids because I knew that if she watched it, she'd go, "Oh, I identify with that girl," and she loved it. And we've been fast friends ever since.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
No, I know. And I played Sally Bowles. She played Sally Bowles. Like,
yes,
our careers have bumped, and we're still in very close touch. And so when I picked Pookie, it was. None of that existed. It was just the rawness of her, the rawness of, I'm thinking of that phone call with Jerry.
Oh my God. I was like, this is one of the most, in that I was like, am I watching one of the most incredible slices of performance that I've ever seen on screen? It's Pookie's on this, she's in a small room where the phone is in her kind of dormitory, her social house. And she's talking to Jerry, and it's a fraught, like, is this a breakup conversation? And I was threads at the end of it.
Well, you are mad at me, aren't you?
Pook, I'm not mad at you. I got flunk warnings in English and philosophy.
Listen, you won't believe what I've been doing this week. But I've really been making a terrific effort to be friends with some of the weirdos around here.
Pookie,
I even apologized to Helen Upshaw.
Listen to me.
And I told Lily and Lorna that I didn't know that she wore dentures, that it was just an accident and a coincidence. I don't even remember saying it about Bill and Helen. I mean, just give me another chance, okay?
It has nothing to do with another chance. It has to do with my academic standing. It has to do with whether I flunk out of school or not. It has to do with me. Not us, but me. And I'm not going home for Easter vacation, and it's not because I'm mad at you. Do you understand that? Pookie, are you listening?
I've got a fantastic idea. I'll come up there and be with you.
What?
During the vacation. I'll just whirl right on up to the dorm. It'll be great. Like you said, nobody will be there, and we'll have the whole place to ourselves, and I can cook for you, and I'll make the bed and everything. I'll keep the Avon lady off your back.
No, Pook.
But I think that it'll be really good for us, nobody will be there, and it'll be like living together, like we're man and wife.
Pookie, don't you understand? My head is on the block.
But you can still study. I mean, I can amuse myself. God, I'm the ultimate self-amuser, remember me?
Pookie, it's just not a good idea.
Jerry, what do you mean it's not a good idea? I think it's a fantastic idea.
I mean, that, you know what, when I teach, I go, watch that phone call. Like, just watch that. There's no seams, there's no acting, it's everything, you know.
It's incredible when you're reminded of performers who've been around for so long, and so much to the point where they feel like they're part of the walls. They feel like they're part of the fabric of the conversation around entertainment. And it's not a matter of like, you know, I hate to say like you find yourself taking them for granted, but their brilliance is so a part of the innate conversation that the specificities and the examples of their brilliance almost kind of escape you at times. And then you see these examples and you're like, oh my God, this is why we call them legend. This is why they became became the idea of Liza, overarching the reality of Liza, because like she is such a singular physical presence, and there's such a, you know, obviously like the legacy coming as the daughter of Judy Garland, and she's such like a multi-hyphenate, incredible performer. But just to see like there's nobody who looks like Liza, and to watch her channel so much like intensity and anxiety in a way that like I feel like that little business acting that someone I feel like Kristen Stewart is so impressive at now, that took directors I think a while to find and really mine in her to its maximum 100%. Potential. And watching that in something with Liza too was just like, oh my God, this is just raw performance.
It's you know, it's catching a firefly in a jar when you see those kinds of performances. And I think sometimes they forget because the persona of Liza is so Liza. And, you know, sometimes I think she has forgotten what she was capable of doing and what she is capable of doing. And it's, you know, in my career too, like, you know, you get parts because of who you are, and you don't get parts because of who you are. And it's just an unending thing. And you know, people go, oh, Liza, I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen Sterile Cuckoo to watch it, because also it's such a slice of the times from 1969, right? The music comes Saturday morning. Like when you hear that song, you go, oh my God, that's just like, it captures a whole era, you know?
Saturday morning, I'm going away with my friend. Will Saturday spend till the end of the day? Just I and my friend.
Well, and I love that you bring that the music up specifically too, because when it started playing, like I paused in my mind like halfway through the movie, and I was like, oh God, like it was just a different era where like a song could carry you through an entire movie. Like you watch the Poseidon Adventure, and there's got to be a morning after. That song, it might as well never stop playing in that movie. And then watching this from 69, it was like, oh, this is the refrain that's gonna get, and like just like the way people, it's not even like just necessarily the way they talk or the language they use that is reflective of a vernacular of the time, but just like the drifting of those scenes, like it feels like being in a folk song, and it's just, it's a wonderful time capsule.
It is a time capsule. Like it tells you everything. Like it, you know, it's, you know, the montage, the music. You know, I'm thinking like in Women Talking, Sarah, like, you know, she does beautiful montages in Women Talking too.
Yeah.
That with the score, which I think, oh my God, the score of Women Talking is so, I just want it on a loop in my brain forever. It's so provocative and perfect. And the same, it's the same for Sterile Cuckoo, for sure. Yeah.
And when, you know, like you say, like you're sitting there 14 years old watching this movie and you're like, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this before. Was it in a way that like, did it feel like, was it never seen in the sense of like, is this transgressive? Is this kind of like edgy? Is this dangerous? Like, what was that first for you?
Well, don't forget, it was 1969. And at 14, I was very aware of being a young hippie. So I was entrenched in it too. I went to free school. I smoked marijuana. You know, my parents let me go to Morocco when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why. They shudder now when they think of it. But so I was in that era. So it's not quite like a capsule of like now it is.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, oh yeah. You know, it's like Simon and Garfunkel. It's just, you know, I was living those, you know, hippie dresses, and that was, you know, I was younger, but very aware of the scene. So, but now it really is a time capsule. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was because it's like watching it, even the rawness of Liza in so many points of this movie, even watching it even now, I was like, man, you put this at TIFF, like you put this performance at TIFF right now, you put this performance at Sundance right now, and this isn't acting of another era, of another generation, of another time, like, oh, well, we performed differently, there were different styles. I was just like, this is transcending through eras.
You know, you can say that about a lot of the greats. Like I was watching Spencer Tracy the other night and I went, this is a movie from 1934. And you think it's just the best acting. Acting is never like every student should look at Spencer Tracy. You know what I mean? Like it's the most beautiful thing. You think, oh, we think we're so progressive now and modern and doing, you know, really, it's all been done. It's all been done.
You know, similarly to watching you and Liza as Sally Bowles being like, oh my God, look at through time, through space and dimensions.
Oh my God. She was incredible to work with, and what an incredible director.
Really?
She is. And
that's wonderful.
She never sort of acted on it, but honestly, on the set of Stepping Out, it was Shelley Winters, Julie Walters, Andrea Martin, me, Bill Irwin, like it was tap dance class, and Liza at the helm. And I remember she came in on a day off, and I had to do a scene where I had to break down and start crying, and like those scenes are always like, oh God. Here we go. All right. Maybe the tear gods be with me. And she stood beside the camera. And every time the cameras rolled, those big brown eyes peeked out from behind the camera. Wow. And she just whispered, it's okay. And there's nothing like acts of kindness to make one lose it. So thank you. And I'll never forget it. And when I have to do those scenes now, I just see Liza's face peeking from behind the cammer. She's
pretty
awesome.
good life hack there. Like, well, I just try to imagine the time Liza personally willed me to tears when I was in front of the camera.
Isn't it crazy? Oh my
I love
God.
I love you brought up Shelley Winters too, just because like on the order of classics, like I have a podcast where I talk only about disaster movies with a friend of mine. And there is, of course, the disaster movie era of Shelley Winters' career. Yeah. And we like a mantra of our podcast is stop killing Shelley Winters. The disrespect of Shelley Winters in those later stage disasters. Shelley Winters, you should have been here and now when TikTok and Twitter were around to lionize you and build fan bases of gay stands around you, because Shelley Winters, you deserve better to the very end.
Oh my God, she was really something. She would just look at me and go, I got your number. You're the quiet one, but I got your number. And she was up all night, slept all day. So she was always in this muumuu gown that they had to sort of knock on her trailer door and bring her out. Oh my God. And she'd say things like, well, Burt Lancaster was maybe gay and, but not in my day. And I thought, oh, okay, Shelley Winters.
Okay, Shelley Winters.
Oh my God. And every day at 4:00, she would get a Snickers bar from the props guy. And one day she came out of her trailer and she was sort of like waking up and she went, taxi. She yelled, taxi. I was like, no, props, Snickers. And I'm like, okay, that is insanity. Shelley Winters, she's a trip.
It's time for a quick break, but we'll be back in a moment with more stories and wisdom from the great Sheila McCarthy. Then I will have one quick thing before I go about another great woman, another accomplished professional, newly minted EGOT in that historic pantheon, Viola Davis. Because why shouldn't we be calling out and celebrating Viola Davis? Stick around for that at the end.
Okay, zebras,
hello.
orangutans. Oh,
yes, sorry. Hi.
I'm not used to the animals talking. Who are you?
Yes, my name's Carrie Poppy. I co-host a podcast called Ona, Ross, and Carrie. This is my co-host Ross right here.
Okay.
We investigate spirituality, claims of the paranormal, and we were wondering if we could get on the Ark.
You did come 2 by 2. I appreciate that. Though most of the things I'm letting on the Ark don't talk.
I'm going to be talking all up on this boat. Do you mind both?
I prefer Ark or
Okay,
barge.
I'm not listening, but if you let me on, then I will make my really good podcast on your boat.
Can you
barge.
at least help clean up all the poop?
I guess I don't see why not.
Well, I'll check out the podcast. Where do I find it?
It's on MaximumFun.org.
Oh my gosh, hi. I'm Dave Holmes, host of the pop culture trivia podcast, Troubled Waters. On Troubled Waters, we play games like motivational speeches. It goes a little like this. Riley, give us an improvised motivational speech on why people should listen and subscribe to Troubled Waters.
I look around this ad and I see a lot of potential to listen to comedians such as Jackie Johnson and Josh Gondelman, and they need you to get out there and listen to them attempt to figure out sound rebus clues or determine if something is a Game of Thrones character or a city in Wales.
I have chills. I'm going to give you 15 points. All that and so much more on Troubled Waters. Find it on MaximumFun.org or wherever you choose to listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. My guest today is Sheila McCarthy, an actor who has been entertaining us on stage and screen for decades. She is one of the stars of Sarah Polley's fantastic Women Talking, the revenge thriller you didn't know you needed, which was nominated for a Best Picture Oscar the day after Sheila and I recorded this conversation. So let's get back to it. You and Judith Ivey are both so incredible in Women Talking. I walked out of there and I was like, I looked at my friend Caitlin and I was like, Sheila McCarthy and Judith Ivey, that was everything. I was just losing my mind. I immediately wrote to my...
Forget the movie stars. Forget all those movie stars. No, Judy, oh my God. She was supposed to play Scarface Jens. She and Frances McDormand flipped parts.
Okay.
Like right before we started shooting. And it was really good because I think that, Agatha, Judy's part is Mother Earth, and she's the calm presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Frances understood that, and I think it was a good thing. And Judy, like, I didn't know Judy, and I've always loved her work and seen her on Broadway, and like, I was so honored to work with her. And she's just like, I wish she lived next door to me. I just adore her, and she's really great. She's just the real deal.
I immediately reached out to my producer and was like, we have to try and get Judith Ivey or Sheila McCarthy for this. I have to talk to him. And it was like, how is it like, you have these stories about like Liza Minnelli and Shelley Winter and like, but now, and like then in Women Talking, like you and Judith are the institutional knowledge. Like you are the one like who come in with the stories about Shelley Winters and getting like directorial guidance from Liza Minnelli.
Oh.
And like, it's all, I mean, it's a murderer's row in this movie, but like, it's like, it's such a it's fascinating to watch your character also be just like the character who is the institutional knowledge. That is the role of you and Judith in this movie, to be the generations of awareness of what has come before and what that portends for what will come next. Like, what an incredible role to sort of have like the weight of time on your shoulders as your character in this.
And I think that, we have the years of experience in the movies. Judy always said, I learned patience during this movie. She said, I'm not a very patient person. I'm trying to take a page from Agatha and sort of learn more patience. And for both of us, because people have said, what was it like being the elders? And you go, well, no, it was just ageless on the set. I mean, those two little girls in the movie, first movie, what a way to start a career.
Wow. Oh my God. That's almost rude to start your career that way. What do you do next?
I just go, good luck to you. And hopefully they'll be telling
and Rooney Mara
stories.
is clearly an ancient being. Rooney Mara is clearly at least 1,000 years old, like eons old, porting through from one vessel to the next.
She's dreamy. She's just Amy. I adore her. She's kind and lovely and beautiful. And I mean, everybody was. It was, I mean, I had to sort of get over my fangirl because I'm like, first shooting and Claire Foy, the queen, is washing my feet. And I'm going, oh my God, what just happened to my career? This is like ridiculous. When my agent told me who was in the movie, I went, get out. And I'm trying to be super cool, right? I'm just trying to be, but it took me a while to get over that, I'll tell you. And, everybody was just brought their A game all the time. And then Ben Whishaw, the incredible Ben Whishaw, the sweetest.
Incredible.
Yeah. No, it was, we all realized that these, especially Judy and I, we realized that it doesn't come along like this very often.
Right.
And the fact that it's having this, quite a bit of success and people are seeing it and people are talking about it, it doesn't happen a lot. Like this is special,
Well, and that, like, I have to because I have to believe that like I was reading something in an interview where you talked about like, you know, COVID, it just made everything, you're always like, you're working as much as you're not working. Being an actor is hard. You're always pursuing work. And you said, I think you said something along the lines of like, and I thought like, maybe I'll just like, I'm going to commit to teaching for a while. And maybe I'm just
no,
I don't want to be in the grind, like at least for a while. And then
I kind of liked COVID for that. I was maybe it's my age, but I was like, this is really cool. I get to wake up in the morning and not stress about anything. I don't have to put on flash. I mean, I'm just feeling quite calm, and I just walk the dog, and I'll gym, and I've been writing a series for 3 years with my friend that no one will ever see. And and then that would take me right to wine time. And then I think, this is pretty cool. And then Sarah Zoomed with me, and I all of a sudden went like, you know, the sort of Energizer bunny. I went, God, I'm going to have to really show up for this one. It's like a game for 3 months, the hardest thing I've ever done. And, you know, I was just coming out of because I think we all did. I think we all reevaluated during COVID about, okay, so what's going to happen now? I mean, it lasted for so long, and things are still not quite the same. So, you know, and you reevaluate when you are. I'm almost 67, and I'm going, okay, I really love teaching. I really love directing. I love how open I feel and how unstressed I feel when I'm wearing those hats. And I really listen to that. So listen, I'm down for anything, but I do love that now.
Well, and it feels like kind of, that's so wonderful to just like hear the story and the experience of like you've been, I think, acting since like at least on screen since like the early 1980s, and you have like many hats that you do wear, and to be reminded at 65 perhaps like that these moments can still happen, and that these opportunities, that these firsts can still present themselves.
Isn't
like that
great?
Feels so hopeful and wonderful to hear.
It is. It's super exciting. And then you can actually get so mired in it that it's out of perspective. Like the idea of Oscars and all that stuff can actually take over your poor little pea brain. And you have to just go, I have to remember now the woman who sat next to me watching women talking, who couldn't talk when it was over. She works in a homeless shelter, and how moved she was, and how earth-shatteringly important the movie was to her. And you go, okay, that's really what matters, you know. Like, you know, and just like, you know, the Hollywood hoopla is great too. But you know, Judy's always saying that to me. She says, Sheila, forget about all that. Although we did make a promise. We said we look so plain in the movie. When we are on the red carpets, we'll be getting really dolled up because. And so, you know, I think with experience comes, you know, you the excitement, yes, and then it's just like, wow, how lucky. How lucky.
I was so grateful when you brought the character that you did, like, and that it was a film from 1969, because it's wonderful to watch a movie made from so long ago that still feels as like urgent and filled with as much edge as anything that we could present as new now in a you know, like moving the conversation forward on equity in Hollywood, moving the conversation forward on more and more substantial roles for women in all aspects, like in front of the camera and in more dimension behind the camera, up and down, below, above and below the line. Like, but to watch something that you from decades and decades ago that still feels every bit as sort of like cutting you to the bone as anything now in progressive 21st century 2023. It's one of those things that's it's another thing filled with sort of hopefulness and being like, we did it before, we're doing it now, and we can keep doing more and better again.
That's
and
right.
it, like to see the sort of through line of history of the power of women on screen before their permissions were expanding such that they are now, to break through to a level of like transgressive, raw power the way someone like Eliza can. It's just like, it's nice to see the precedent for what can feel so new now.
Yes. And it's, you know, we're not there, And maybe there will be a time when we don't notice like 20 women on stage.
Yeah.
The opening film. We're certainly not there. And we have to keep, breaking that glass ceiling for sure. But what I love also, again, about Sterile Cuckoo is the universality of it. That yes, she's female and she's young and she's a broken little bird, but that striving, that trying so hard, like those universal themes they touch everybody, and I think they're sort of genderless. I hope.
Were you what Pookie would consider one of the weirdos, or were you someone trying to fit amongst the weirdos, or were you kind of putting yourself at an arm's length like Liza was in this movie, apart from the weirdos?
I was shyer. I wouldn't let my odd out until I really found it on stage, I think, in comedy, but I was a much quieter underdog, I think, than her. Trying to fit in, trying to be cool, trying to, one of the girls. Never was the beauty, never felt. But as a result of that, I stood out. I stood out in my dance classes. I stood out. I wasn't like anybody else. So that was that. I understood that from a very early age, and I realized that that's a power. I
was going to say, was that something that was available to you when you were young, was understanding the asset that was standing out? Or was that more like I don't want to be the tall poppy. Like, I just want to be kind of down here with everybody else.
No, I liked standing out. I think I found that. I think I found that. And I wasn't noisy about it, but I understood it. And so when I saw things like, well, even Funny Girl or Sterile Cuckoo, or I Love You, Junie Moon, which was another movie that Liza did, where they're just oddballs and they were, not the beauties, not the girls next door. I realized there is power in those creatures, and I wanted to be that very early on, for sure.
What's the matter?
Nothing. It's just that everything's a little bit perfect. Somehow or other, when everything's a little bit perfect, I just get a little bit nervous.
Maybe as a teacher you get asked this a lot, but a thing I always ask my friends who are teachers of English students about is I want to know, like, does the objective of class feel like it is the same thing for the kids you teach now as it was for you when you were yourself a student? Like, do you feel like as you've taught actors over years and years, is that primary cell of what is motivating these kids to want to be actors is that the same, or has the modern world and the perception of celebrity and how success is measured, has that changed at all? Like the way that students interface with you and their wants and needs?
I think that's a great question. There's an impatience now, and they don't want to creep before they crawl. They want instant, social media gratification, instant, a lot of them. And I always caution students, I was teaching a comedy class at a college here, and I said, you need to be singing, you need to be dancing, if you want to have a career, if you're in it for the long haul, you need to, look outside. You need to have many more things in your back pocket that you're able to do, because if there's anything you can think of doing other than this, do it, because it's too hard.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. And, in Canada, I think what I have found, because I've done lots of work in the States, but I think in Canada, we're able to sort of work, and maybe in England too, I work around the mediums a lot. Like I direct, I do cartoons, I do theater, I do musicals, films. I found my time in LA a little bit. They want you to come in with your vaudeville hook, and you're just going to do that. And that's too narrow for me. Like you look at the careers who sustain, and that they certainly are in the States, but they're the actors who sort of, break out of their little stereotypes and go on to do other things. But you have to work at it. You have to still hit the ground running and pound the pavement and get a hold of people. It never ends. Like I am my business. It never friggin' ends, ever. And if you think it's going to, there's no there. Ever. So, if, sometimes you'll get offered stuff, but most of the time you got to go after it still.
Yeah.
But that's the fun. Like, I like that challenge. Not always, but if I have enough time where I'm going, okay, what is going on? Nothing. Then I'm just going to climb out of the cave and just go, okay, I got to make something happen.
Well, do you find that, and with these, like you said, like the phone call scene in Sterile Cuckoo, you offer that to your students, like, is the discovery of Eliza, is that something that is, by the time you're getting to these students, are they like, of course I have touch points with Liza Minnelli, or are they like, wow, this is opening a door for me?
Well, some of them barely know who she is, but because they're young now, and that's why I love educating them. They are, I think, seeing something like Liza's phone call is encouraging, because they go, she's not a beauty, she's not, and they go, oh, look at that, isn't that great? I also love to show Tom Hanks' audition for Splash. It's a great audition. He screws up the lines. But he knows his stuff. Like, it's a really good, imperfect, flawed moment in time where something about what he was doing spoke to the secretaries in Ron Howard's office, right? And because there were a lot of people who wanted that part, Tom Cruise, they were all in the lineup, and somehow Tom Hanks set himself apart. So I love to show and tell examples, because that's always been, my power source. And then, it doesn't always work, but you gotta try.
One of my favorite audition clips I've ever seen is actually Lea Michele auditioning for Glee, because she's auditioning for the part of Quinn.
Wow.
And she starts singing and the piano isn't quite with her in the right spot. And she's in the middle of a note, cuts herself off, looks at the pianist, and she's like, not quite like that. That's going a little bit too fast. We're going to start from the top. And she counts him in. And I was like, and it was like, and that was, watching that's the moment she became Rachel Berry.
Wow.
Because whoever was in that room was like, so Quinn's not going to happen, but we've got this other part in the show.
I remember hearing that Barbara Streisand came in mismatched shoes for her audition for Funny Girl on Broadway. Entirely deliberately, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not above doing that. I think that's just great.
Well, that's it's such an interest. There's no other profession like it where kind of you are your whole self is the audition at every moment from the second you walk in the door. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, I'm going to do the sides, and that's going to be doing a character, but the rest of me has to be on message enough in what's happening here and things I might not even clock consciously about what I'm bringing into this room. And so it's a crazy thing you have to field of being like, when I walk out of that room, yes, I'm being judged on my performance, but inevitably I'm also being judged on me. Yeah. So it's not personal, but I would imagine it's real hard to learn the part where you leave the audition at the door.
I always say to students, leave a piece of yourself in the room, because there's so many of you. Yeah. What is going to set you apart, and what is going to, and that's super different now too, because it's all self-tape. So you're not in the room with people anymore, which is good and bad. You know what I mean? It means I can do a self-tape 100 times and then send it. But I'm such a control freak. I go, are they watching it? And that's when I start emailing and going, okay, did you watch it? And that's where the business has changed too, because there's just so many actors. There's so many, but there's so much streaming, and there's so much
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing I was wondering about was you're watching this Liza performance when you're 14 and, feeling a sense of newness about it. Did you know that were you going toward acting at that point? Was something that was already a part of your life?
I was a dancer at that point.
Okay.
And I think I just, I was so influenced by sort of Mary Martin and Peter Pan and, and Liza and, certain other films and stuff. And I think I wasn't 100% sure, but it got stored away. And I really seriously never figured out anything else to do. And so I thought, well, then I guess this is what I'm doing. And I was a dancer at that point. I became a professional dancer, but I wasn't, I was not great. I mean, I was good, but I danced from sort of here up, sort of. I was like this. I remember a choreographer saying, Sheila, do you even have a cartwheel? I go, No, I don't think so. I don't
Yeah.
think so. I've got, tits and teeth. I can do. So I was being funny very early on. Like I played the Wicked Witch of the West when I was 10. So I had that taste of people laughing at me, and I kind of love that. So
there's a lot of echoes in this conversation between one I got to have with the beautiful actor Doug Jones about like how, and his character was the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz, and him coming into his power, like not at first appreciating his difference as an asset of his, but then growing into realizing nobody is me but me, and then becoming, of course, like one of finding the beauty in our most amazing monsters throughout the course of his career.
And it's also that thing of because I love that road of insecurity and being vulnerable and being and you just have to watch that. You have to watch that it doesn't tip, and it does. Like it comes and it goes. And I've spent more time not working than working. I've had a great career. It's fantastic, but it's a tough old road. And
that's the reality of even a great career.
Yeah, that's right. And any actor is going to tell you that. And it's just, you somehow you keep going, but it is that those characters, those quirky, pooky atoms of the world, like they're beautiful to play because they are in all of us. And I think that, I have strengths as an actor. Liza has strengths as an actor. I know what I could play. And that's something I try to impart to students too, that you must realize it, do whatever you want in acting class, but just know that the makeup, who you are, who you look like, what's the color of your skin, your gender, your age, those are all going to dictate whether you're right or you're wrong for parts. Like it's just not always going to be, not everything's coming your way.
I remember I had a conversation with that about like famously gorgeous Blake Lively.
Wow.
And like, there's no real arguing with that. It's not like, who's the showstopper in the room? We know who that is. And her talking about like, she was like, listen, I'm not Meryl. Like, that's not me. She was like, I'm so invested in like the presentation of my characters, and I'm so interested in clothing and how I present like in a role, because for me, that's where it really comes to life for me. She's like, because I'm never going to be Meryl. So for me, it's the trappings that I put on and the way that I realize the character through those kind of ornaments that make me feel like I'm most prepared to go into any role.
But that's I love that. And
me too.
I think she underestimates herself by saying that, because I think
Agreed.
That is a really good way in. Like coming from the dance world, I totally understand that. And I worked with Uta Hagen in New York, and it's all props and it's all it's not method. It's like plumbing, plumbing, and that always spoke to me. And so, like our polyester dresses and our socks and our sandals and our hair slicked back, and that really spoke to me in terms of character. So, she can say that, and maybe she's okay with that. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think that's just her way in.
Yeah, she was totally comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I bet if you talk to Meryl Streep, she'd say the same thing. You know what? I bet she'd say, I love, finding out what the designer's going to dress me in, and we have that conversation and let that, I often say in the wardrobe rooms, thank you for giving me my character. Like, and I'm facetious, but at the same time, I love all that stuff too. So, it's great. That's funny. But I think that also being the pretty girl, Blake Lively, that's another can be a problem for beautiful girls who don't think of themselves. I've heard this so many times from students. They use a beautiful thing, will walk in and says, I'm not funny. And you go, I'll be the judge of that. But everyone has their Achilles, and where they think their strengths are in there. And you know what, if you limit yourself, then you're going to be limited. That's all. I worked with a director once, Robin Phillips, at the Stratford Festival, and he thought I was beautiful, and he gave leading lady parts that I was totally unprepared to play. And because I was thinking, I just want to be the maid. And I remember someone saying to me one day, Sheila, you need to be a leading lady. And I'm going, do I really need to be?
Do I
really? I don't really think so. Oh my God. So that's me limiting myself, it comes and it goes.
Well, my concluding question then would be like on the notes of like limits and possibility, like a question that if it comes around, like I like to get to in this podcast is like, what with this work that you have done that's such a triumph, and not even necessarily for the specifics of it, like the gender aspects of it, but just getting it and being like, wow, this surprised me in a way that maybe I hadn't felt surprised in a while. And I wanted to know what, like you said, I'm 67 now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you take from something like this that shows you possibility for what might even be next or more that you might not have been thinking of as being available to you front and center before this came out and came up to you and then came out? Like, what does this kind of indicate to you? Like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm affirmed in this path, or I'm going to pursue something I wasn't going to previously. Like, what does it open up in some way?
Well, first of all, I think I've got to say that, I often say it's one of the hardest things I've ever worked on because Sarah Polley had such a complete idea of her movie, and she's an incredible director, and her, the bar was super high. So I realized that here's wow, you have to work really hard sometimes. get there. And for me, you can't just rest on, your comfort zones. For much of that movie, I was out of a comfort zone, and I watch it and I go, I don't even remember shooting that. And that says to me how important the relationship is with director to actor, and how the stillness and the quietness and the very gentle comedy of Greta works in the movie, because I really had to work hard. So what would I like to do with that? I'd like to do more of that. Like, I really, oh God, if doors opened and there's more of an international market and more people are like, big movie stars are seeing this movie now. Isn't that exciting? And Rooney keeps saying to me, Sheila, there's a lot of parts for you out there. I go, are there? Okay. So I'm trying to, kick that door open and also just be real about it and just go, okay, and enjoy the ride. But really, you're
like, Rooney, bring me with you.
Seriously. And so I just learned, that, a quiet stillness and finding that voice in me. It's not, I don't know, as I always have to be tap dancing in the corner. So, you know what I mean? And I've done a lot of that. And so I learned a ton making this movie. So more, please. Whatever. We'll see.
No, it's just so wonderful to hear. Like, I just get so excited when I know that people got excited about the thing that they did. When maybe they weren't sure of where that excitement existed in their ecosystem at this moment, and then to be reaffirmed of the availability of it and the fruitfulness of it. Like, that's just like, we should all be so fucking lucky as to like be able to have that occur anytime in our lives.
And anytime. And at the time, I don't think I was like, I wasn't living that. I wasn't aware, really. And I'm so method. And I've never thought of myself, because I take it very seriously, and I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I've always think I've had a pretty good perspective about this business, and I realized that this was something very, very special.
Well, Sheila, I so appreciate your perspective and your time and your generosity in talking to me today. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with me.
My pleasure. It was just fantastic. You're great.
Thank you so much to Sheila McCarthy. If you haven't seen Women Talking yet, it is playing in some theaters in advance of the Oscars next month. I cannot encourage you enough to go see this. Please go. This is not just some Sundance movie talking at you. I know what you think when you feel that way, but this isn't that. And not that that's a bad thing, but if that is your advanced perception of what Women Talking is, I entreat you to please challenge that assumption by going to see it. It deserves your support. And if you're looking for more Sheila, you have so many options. But I'll just say the one film she mentioned, I've Heard the Mermaids Singing, is available on Canopy and the Criterion Channel for all you snobs out there. And now, one quick thing before I go, Viola Davis. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to her. She won the EGOT. She reached EGOT status at this year's Grammys recently for her recording of her memoir, her audiobook recording of Finding Me. And you know what? This is an historic achievement for an historic woman. She was in one of my absolute, no question, top 10 favorites of last year. Hell, probably top 5 in The Woman King, which was absolutely ludicrously, I don't think recognized in any category in the Oscar nominations. So let us take this moment to honor the brilliance. We don't have, this truly is a quick thing. This is just taking a moment to honor the brilliance of Viola Davis, getting something that I think cements her in an awards way, and not like she got the Grand Slam kind of way. It cements what has always been there with her gravitas, with her talent, with her presence, with her beauty, with her elegance and eloquence. Every sort of thing that makes her a singular presence on screen and as a presence in Hollywood. I'm so glad that this person now has this exceptional designation to go along with the ways that they were already so demonstrably exceptional. That's awesome. We celebrate that. We celebrate her. In this house, we will continue to celebrate The Woman King. LaShawna Lynch should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actress. But that's it. That's the one quick thing. It was truly so quick today. And that is our show. You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or you can send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jor Crew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned. Audience supported.